Have you ever been called into HR's office or had that call? I'm your host, Danielle Zapchenk, and thanks for listening to the Parable Podcast. Joining me today is co-founder of Legacy Roots Co., Christian Cornish, who shares about the uncertainty and surrender in job loss.
I remember having that roller coaster of like faith, low faith, faith, low faith, and really trying to navigate and not have it be fake. I've grown up in the church my whole life. I've heard, oh God, I'm praying for you. Just keep praying. God's got this. And like, those are good things. They're not untrue at all. But like, when you're in the midst of that storm, it's kind of like the last thing you want to hear.
Here's my conversation with Christian Cornish. I am so thrilled to chat with you, Christian. I am always glad to be connected through mutual friends. So we have a mutual friend named Hannah. You may have heard her on episode 121. So thank you so much for being a part of the Parable Podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. And yeah, big shout out to Hannah. A great friend, and she's awesome.
Oh, how did you meet her?
We knew Hannah in college, both my wife Kayla and I actually. And we've just stayed connected ever since. So her and Kayla have been working a bit together over the last year, and it's just been really cool to watch her journey.
I love friends like that are just like uplifting and encouraging each other as you kind of walk through whatever season you are in and like growing in your gifts. That's awesome. You guys live in Asheville, North Carolina, but we both lived in Wisconsin for a time. I grew up there. So you said you grew up in Green Bay. I grew up in Appleton. What was that experience like?
I grew up in Iowa.
Okay.
So not as cool as Green Bay, but I was a Packer fan.
All right.
I was a lifelong Packer fan. So when I met a girl from Green Bay, he was like, get her now. We lived in Green Bay for 10 years. Kayla and I did when we were first married, and I absolutely loved it. I love the culture. Obviously, I love the Packers, but I just loved everything about it. It was such a great place to start our family. Yeah. And the community was absolutely amazing.
You know, when you're younger, you don't recognize like the things that are cool about your town or the area that you live in, because you're just like, this is so boring. Like, why would anyone live here? And now as an adult, I'm like, you know what? It really wasn't that bad. It wasn't that boring. It was just my teenage mood, I guess. But yeah, Green Bay is fun. We have both share a love of cheese curds. I love a deep fried cheese curd. I don't know about you.
I like fresh cheese curds. It's fun when they squeak.
Yes.
You can't touch a deep fried cheese curd. You're 100% right. No, absolutely. And not the ones from Culver's. I love Culver's. Shout out Culver's, but no.
Hashtag not sponsored, but I will eat Culver's cheese curds. There's a lot of people out there that have never heard about just like the cold or warm cheese curds, and they squeak and they're like, what are you talking about? Not the newness, like the freshness of a cheese curd. There's like a squeak to it when you bite into it. And so take a trip to Green Bay, any place in Wisconsin, really. There's cheese stores everywhere. So you and your wife, Kayla, are parents to 6 children. Just
all
6.
Ours, by the way. I get
all of yours.
I get that a lot. I was at the pharmacy last week and a lady looks at me and goes, all yours? I was like, you're a professional. But yes, they are all mine.
Wow. Did you come from a big family?
Well, I kind of have a crazy, complicated background family story because I was adopted. I was raised as an only. I now know a lot of my family, my birth family. And so I have 3 siblings. And so now I am big brother, which is like a totally different experience. Yeah. So I did not, though. I was raised as an only. I always worked with kids growing up, but honestly, we never have thought about how many kids we'd have. We have always just said, whatever the Lord gives us. And, you know, for now, that's just keeps going. I can't even say anything else about it. We've been very blessed from very early on. We got married really young and we love every second of it.
Yeah. How young is your littlest?
She is 11 months.
11 months.
Yeah,
oh,
she
my
is
goodness.
the family favorite. That's probably the problem. The next one is always the family favorite. And they're like, oh, we're so cute. Like, we can do this again. And they just keep getting cuter.
Well, who doesn't love a baby? I am curious because I know this isn't a part of your parable story. So you grew up as an only child. Mm-hmm. Did you always know that you were adopted, or was there a time when your adoptive parents let you know about that?
I always knew. I don't have like a significant moment that I could say I went from knowing to not knowing. It's just always, and they felt like that was really important. And I always really appreciated that.
Yeah. So what was the journey like finding your biological siblings? Did they find you, or did you seek them out?
I had a closed adoption, but my grandmother stayed in touch. So through the agency, I got letters or books. Her name was Mary Jo, and she was super intentional. And I actually was in college. I was my sophomore year, and I can't remember how it came up, but we decided to meet. And so we ended up meeting her and her husband. He was not my grandfather. My grandfather passed away younger in life. And so, we met them, and it was absolutely amazing. Such a powerful experience. It was just her. I didn't meet my mom at that point. And then she ended up passing away. She had pancreatic cancer and died 4 months later, really unexpectedly. Through that, then I ended up deciding to reach out to my mom. My parents had her contact information. They had met her at the funeral. And so a few months later, I was like, all right, my wife really encouraged me to do this. I had been very resistant and really struggled with it and kind of buried it my whole life. So then I reached out to her, and we just started an email communication. And then from there, we decided to meet. I was in Green Bay at this point, and she was in Pella, Iowa. And Dubuque happened to be, which is where I grew up, Dubuque, Iowa, is right in the dead middle. So we just met there for a weekend. And I think at the time we had my two oldest, the two girls. And so we met, and she brought my siblings with her. And so that was just a really special experience. And we've all been really close ever since.
That's so cool.
Visit each other in each of our towns multiple times. And, we're in each other's lives for, sending each other Christmas presents each year and birthdays, and, really just engaged in each other's life and know what's going on. And it's really, really cool. It's a really special story.
Yeah, what a gift to have that chance to build that relationship from the ground up, really. Yeah. And also have that experience. Yes, you didn't have your childhood together, but to now just be able to be like more present and thankful and really intentional in the time that you do have together. I love that. Christian, would you say that your family that you grew up, that, Jesus was a part of your life, or did that come later on for you?
No, it was always a part of my life. I mean, I was named Christian because my parents were Christians, and they were wanting to be really intentional with their name choice. So I was in church probably the first weekend I came home. And really every weekend since, I kind of had one of those, I wasn't even really rebellious in college. I just stopped going to church for like a semester, maybe. My roommates and I just were staying up too late, and we slept in. We weren't even doing anything crazy. We were at a dry campus, a dry college Christian campus. So I was still going to chapel twice a week. A love for Jesus has always been a huge part of my life, a defining part of my life. And so it's really different too, because that's not Kayla's story. Kayla came to know the Lord when she was in high school. And so we had a different upbringing, and it's funny. Like sometimes I'll talk about really churchy, like youth group things. I'm like, oh yeah, kids will do this. And she's like, what's that? What are you talking about? So it's a fun experience now because she's seeing our kids grow up in that but for me, it's exactly what I had and what I wanted for my children.
It's a similar situation for my husband and I. I grew up in the church. We started going to a non-denominational church when I was in 5th grade. So I understand youth group, VBS, all the things. But my husband, it was later on for him, just really understanding and knowing when Jesus was more than just a name was really just like around the time that we started dating. So there's like some things that he's just like, okay, or why do we do this? Or, but I think that's beautiful for parenting as well, where, there's different perspectives, different learning styles, different understandings of things. And then also like growing together as a couple, but imparting that on your kids. So I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, this whole podcast is really about stories, and just it's cool to hear where you were from, how much you love cheese curds, and but really like that. I think stories matter. I think Jesus did that so well, where he just said things in a way that connected with people on that heart level. So I'd love for you to be able to share what is one of your parable stories with us.
Yeah, I'd love to share about a time that was really challenging for me personally and really on our family, because I lost my job. And at the time we had 5 children. It really led me to taking a giant leap. Our family did a giant leap from Green Bay, a place that we loved. And we had such a great church community, and I thought there should be great jobs around because it's a big enough town. And ultimately we made the leap to Asheville. And it was a long season of uncertainty and surrender. But we just, we were patient to what God was doing, and he just provided so much for us. So yeah, I would love to share that story with you too.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is July of 2021. I have a double major in accounting and finance. So I joke I'm kind of a recovering accountant because sitting behind a desk and just accounting all day by myself, I did that for like 2 years and it was not for me. So I've always sat though in finance, accounting, management roles where I get to be interacting with teams and people. And so I'm in this career path and I'm loving it. It's going great. But I ended up losing my job in July of 21. And a few months prior, it was just interesting because Kayla and I had co-founded Legacy Roots Co., which is our company. And she was previously a top leader in a well-known direct sales company. We were driving cars, going on trips. It was just a really great time. And she really felt led, though, that God was calling her in a different direction. And so we gave up this part of our life, just being faithful to what he was leading us to. And it was Legacy Roots Co., working with families and teaching rhythms and systems to the modern day Christian on how to grow their roots deeper in Christ. And so we're on this path and she's just turned in the car and all this stuff. And then I just get the call from my boss one day, like totally unexpected. And there's an HR person there. And it's like, whenever you're in the corporate world and you get called to a meeting and your boss in HR, it's not good. And that was when I got let go. And so, thankfully I was given a nice severance, and it was a time with Legacy Roots Co. I just really prayed about it for a while. I grieved that for a bit. Yeah. And then I was like, I really believe the Lord is not asking me to jump to looking for the next job. I really felt like it was time to invest in our company. And at that point, though, I knew it wasn't going to be permanent, but I knew it was a time for us to like really get in there and build it and get things off the ground. And so that's kind of where I went. And Kayla and I were so aligned with that. So in about 4 months go by and I was ready to start searching again. Like Kayla and I both looked at each other and we were like, all right, we've built things up. We've got our website. We've got our first course ready. We've really got some systems in place. And it was like, okay, it's time. We got the green light. I'm going to go look for my next job. So I get to October and then November and December. I couldn't find anything. I wasn't getting interviews. I was applying for dozens of jobs every week. I'm getting nothing. It was really weird because it was a time where like everyone's like, hey, jobs are great. Like the market wages are going up. Anybody can get a job right now.
Oh gosh. And
it was like, no one, not everyone can get a job right now. And I was getting a few, but they were like calling us and I'd have to move somewhere else in Wisconsin. And we're like, no, we love Green Bay. I like really don't feel led to go anywhere else. And so we just had this one prayer request: God, give us a job by Christmas. I mean, we were believing it. We're praying that very specifically. And it was like, because our funds are running out at this point. It's like, okay, we're going to have we got lots of kids at this point. Like, we're not sitting around like waiting forever. And so we just got to this point of living week by week, waiting for God's provision. And, I can totally get like, you could blame God at that point and just be like, God, what are you doing? I thought I heard you. And, at that point, we really, though, felt so much like we needed to lean in. At this point, it was so valuable to have spiritual disciplines in our life, those rhythms of Sabbath and our family rhythms, because like my mental and emotional health also, I needed to care for myself. And so it was so good to have those things in place throughout this process. It was a part of what we had been working on. And it was really helping to sustain me in my spiritual walk at that time. But it was a very, like, every day was heavy, trying to hold on to some hope. And I love it. You know, this, I don't know if you ever heard the book called The Critical Journey. It's this awesome book. I highly, highly recommend it, about our spiritual walk. And there's a chapter in there that's called The Wall. It's the stage where we go from, like, we hit some difficult part of our life where we either turn back, and not to say we lose our faith, but it's not the opportunity to deepen our faith, or we lean in. And this was just a season of like, okay, God, I'm going to lean in. And, you know, we were doing that in the midst of this chaotic time. So with that, my wife goes on a silent retreat, which at this time, silence and solitude was a practice that we were doing. And Kayla is like, she loves silence and solitude. It is a hard one for me. I appreciate it, but I'm always like, oh, you go do that. And so she goes, though. And at that time, we had decided to open our search. So I'd only been looking in Green Bay area. I remember she had said, why don't you try Asheville or some of these other places, you know, just see. So I apply, she comes back, and she's got this beautiful little painting she had done on her retreat. And it's these mountains, and it said like, your faith can move mountains, and a little personal message to me. And she's like, just hang in there. Like, I know God's going to move mountains. And I'm like, I can't believe you just painted me this picture. I applied to 3 mountain towns, and all 3 of them called me for interviews while you were gone.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And it was Asheville, Salt Lake City, Utah, and a job in Denver, Colorado. And it was like, what is happening? So at this point, we're like, it gets to January, and we're like, I'm actually in these interviews. I'm getting doors opening. I have a few others open. And it's like, wow, God, I think we're moving. Like, we're looking at each other, we're like, I think this is going to happen. And it was just such a really crazy time for us, because we loved our community. We had cultivated just such a beautiful community of people. And I didn't know how to leave that. But we just started living by faith, and we really felt like we could be moving to Asheville. And, you know, we started looking at schools. We started thinking about the future. And then all 3 jobs turned me down. And I was like, okay. But one of them, the one company in Asheville, was like, it's not a fit, because I was kind of, let's say in my career, I was further ahead than the position. So they were like, we got one coming down the road. Can't say if it'll be a few months or not. I'll call you then. And I'm like, I've heard I'll call you if 1,000 times at this point, like for months and months. I'm like, I'm not going to hear. And so I get to February, back to 0. I am blessed to get a temporary position, which was perfect. Gave us exactly what we needed. So we're like, okay, cool. I'm remote at this point. This will be great. That company in Asheville calls me back. The lady actually called me back. I was blown away, because the benefits were amazing. Unlimited PTO and a bunch of awesome stuff. And I was like blown away. And they end up offering us to move. And it was like, what? Okay. Like, after all these months, and we just knew it was the right thing for us. And I probably needed that whole season just to get to that point of like, okay, I can move. And they're like, hey, you have 3 months. Find a way to get here in 3 months. You can start remote. Perfect. Asheville is a horrible market to find housing. Even getting apartments is hard. And so we were like, all right, we'll probably need all 3 months. God provided us this amazing rental opportunity, a rent that was like cheaper than others. It was a house. We had never had a single family house. We'd always lived in like duplexes or something else. And he's like, oh, by the way, though, you have to move in 3 weeks.
Sure.
We were like, yeah, okay. And it was just amazing. Like, we had all the help we needed. We continued to Sabbath through that whole process. Like, we took the time off, which I think most people, and even I was like, well, maybe we shouldn't. We have so much to do. But like, God carried us through that. We got there in 3 weeks. And I actually went through like clinical anxiety at that point for the first time ever in my life. The only time, thankfully. But it was all around the move. And, you know, they say moving and new job is like the top 5 most stressful things you can do. But, you know, our rhythms really sustained me through that time. And the practice of Sabbath and other things really helped me remind myself that like, I'm not in control. And it was like, God just kept providing over and over and over, whether it was money or whether it was this temp job or whether it was all the help we needed to move and just having a place to live. And it was just amazing. And we've loved Asheville. We have cultivated an even deeper community. I couldn't have even, and it's been like 2 years.
Yeah.
God has just been so amazing. It's just been incredible.
It's definitely a roller coaster of emotions, all these different feelings. It reminded me of when you were talking about the call that you got. I don't remember if I was in 5th or 6th grade, where my dad called my mom from work to let her know that he had lost his job. And I probably didn't fully understand the magnitude of it, but I know like that feeling of just like your family is just like deflated for a moment. And I'd love to ask you, as a husband, as a father, I know that men feel the weight of providing, and they want to be that for the family, and to have that loss, it kind of cracks away, if you will, at your worth, at least what you hold your worth to be. So I'd love for you to kind of talk to me about what you were feeling as a dad, as a provider in that moment.
That's a great question. And funny note, I didn't get this far. I got laid off again. So I'm in the midst of this all over again, but it's funny how different it is.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking this, because I haven't reflected back to like my thoughts and feelings at that time. It definitely was a big stroke to my ego, which is like a personal thing. I definitely remember feeling like, those moments of, oh no, what are we going to do? I think having that provider side made it harder on my faith. Like, it challenged my faith more. Because Kayla, I don't know what I'd do without her. She is very much that, God's got this. Like, it's going to be fine. I'm not even worried about it. Like, yeah, you need a job, but like, it's going to come through. It'll all work out. And I'm the rational thought. Like, I just think about it like, well, I mean, but what if not? And so I remember that was definitely difficult. I'd have those moments, and it is probably from adoption. I'm one to like bottle things in. It's been a huge healing journey that I started really right before, I think, losing my job there, and really even a ton more since, but learning to be open or share my thoughts and feelings a lot sooner. So I definitely had to work on not bottling it all in too much, because then sometimes I'd like it blow up a little bit on the kids, or I just like get mad at home and let frustration come out in my conversation. So I remember having that roller coaster of like faith, low faith, low faith, and really trying to navigate and not have it be fake. Like, I've grown up in the church my whole life. I've heard oh God, I'm praying for you. Just keep praying. God's got this. And like, those are good things. They're not untrue at all. But like, when you're in the midst of that storm, it's kind of like the last thing you want to hear. Some days it's like, please, like, it's not helping me right now, but it is helping, but it's not. And so, it was this roller coaster, but like really leaning in. I remember, it was hard to let go, but it was the practice of Sabbath that really, I think, rooted me in that time, because every day of the week I had to stop and say, it's that whole like mind, soul, body. I am letting this go for a bit. And I remember each week that was like a sense of relief. And then I did turn around and say, okay, now it's time to go get back to working hard again. But it was definitely an emotional roller coaster. Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple times, Christian, of like the rhythms and the rest and having the Sabbath. One, can you share about what Sabbath is, if somebody hasn't heard of that before, and also what that looks like for your family? Because I think it's different of how anyone can Sabbath. So what is that for you guys?
In scripture, the Sabbath is a practice of taking 24 hours off every week, no work, and it's rooted in creation. So God made the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day, he rested. And so it's also the fourth commandment in the 10th commandments. And it's the one I joke out Christians forget, because we're good with the first three. And then we've turned Sabbath into going to church on Sunday for like your hour and a half commitment. And I grew up like that, so no judgment at all. And then, we're good with the back half, which is how we treat each other. And I know, like, reading the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer was a big influence on us. And I'm struggling to remember where that practice came from for us. But we were just like, really feeling convicted at one point about like, we need to incorporate more rest. We went through a season of burnout, and Kayla will share that. That's really her parable story she's going to share. We were doing everything. I mean, we were both working these careers. We were pastoring a church as well, a couple kids at the same time. Like, our life was nuts. So we began to feel convicted, like, we need the Sabbath. We need to consistently rest. And it's ancient Hebrew practice. And once you get into it, you're like, wow, this is not legalistic. This is the best. Like, we joke now, and we teach our students that, and this has come up all over the place. Like, I think Abraham Heschel in his book, The Sabbath, talks about this. Like, you start to live for the Sabbath throughout the rest of the week. Yeah. And it's just this for us, it's a 24-hour period of rest. So usually it's Friday night to Saturday night. And we have dinner as a family, which we love. We do candlelit dinners, and the kids love it because they love the atmosphere that it creates and the kind of calm that comes from that. And we sit around the table together and enjoy that time, and we linger. And then, we just take the day to rejuvenate. And so we play games, or we go for hikes, or sometimes we just sit around and we do watch some TV together. Sometimes we say, nope, we're going to all read because we all want to do that. And then some things are different. Like, I like to exercise. It's something that I don't always get to do throughout the week. So I'm even willing to go to the gym if I need to. But Kayla is like, no, I'm not moving if I don't have to. It's just different. And so, but we still create space for everyone in the family to find some kind of rejuvenation. Some are extroverts, some are introverts. So we kind of mix our activities up as a family and try to incorporate something for everyone that they enjoy. So we play games, we try to do it together. If we, we have our family shows that we like. So if we watch something we all want to watch together. And so, it's just such a really special time for us.
Christian, you mentioned earlier, when you were in that season, you were going week by week. You're just saying, I believe that, you have something for us, God. And there was a moment where you were saying, like, I thought I heard you. So I'd love for you to speak to the person who feels that. Like, I thought I heard the direction that you had for my life. I thought I was listening. I thought I was being present. But now I'm really questioning it. What would you say to them?
It's one I'm a little careful to be prescriptive about, because when I study the spiritual journey more and more, I realize God he encounters each of us a little differently, and we all have our own circumstances, and we also encounter him in our own ways. The way that I can sit and hear from God or enjoy spending time with him is different than Kayla. Like, I'll sit and I read books by this dude called N.T. Wright for fun, which are super complicated. Or I have another book over here I've been reading this year on Leviticus.
That's always a fun hang,
Exactly. But a lot of people don't like that. And I experience and I hear and I see God in this different way. And Kayla's put me out in nature, silence and solitude. Let me paint. So what I would say, though, is my encouragement is lean in to the Lord. And I do think the prescriptive way of doing that is spiritual practices. I think they are. I learned about them in college, and I was kind of like, oh, yeah, cool, whatever, Dallas Willard, whatever, some silly book. Richard Foster, that was it. We all had to read this Richard Foster book, but nobody read it. It's one of those, okay, whatever. And now it's no, these are so valuable. And when we have them rhythmically a part of our life, whether it's Sabbath or fasting or prayer, daily scripture, when we go in the storm, you leaning into him. And if you're not doing it, that's okay. That's not to shame you. It's because I know, then you start doing it and you're oh, I feel like a vending machine. I need God. And there's no shame in that at all. Yeah. But it is lean into him in some way that you will think that you're going to hear. In our society and our life is built around hurry and running and distraction. Yeah. I'll raise my hand. I listen to way too many sports podcasts, and Kayla's probably told me that 4 times this week. So I get it. There's always something that is distracting us. And so taking the time to lean in and then trust his character. God tells us himself in Exodus that he is compassionate and gracious and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. And I'm in that season again I call it the unemployed club. And I have got to remind myself that, though, a lot. And it is the spiritual practices that are that opportunity. Some of them are daily, short of reminding myself of this. I've been reading the Sermon on the Mount every day because I'm like, Jesus, like, remind me who you are. Oh, that I don't need to be anxious, that you've got this. Like, I don't need to worry about tomorrow. But it is leaning into him that makes all the difference, I believe.
That's so good. That's absolutely right. So you said you're in the unemployed club right now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Hopefully by the time people listen to this, no, not.
Absolutely. To God's ears. Well, you had already labeled this for yourself. Like, this is your parable of uncertainty and surrender. So what would you say has shifted, or you are like utilizing because of this first experience? Because you had said, like, it's kind of different this time around. You're not freaking out as much.
Yeah.
What's different this time?
I would say I've gone through a lot of healing since my last experience. I've really taken time to work on the deeper work around like my adoption and things like that.
Yeah.
Definitely being rooted. I'm much more rooted in the spiritual disciplines than I was after a few years. And all of that is helping me remember and like reminding myself of God's provision. I think it's that constant remembering. And when you read the Old Testament, the word remember comes up a lot, a ton, especially in the Torah, the first 5 books, right? Like Moses is saying, remember what God did for you. Like, you just got out of Egypt. Remember that. Don't forget. Wait, remember that. And like the whole book of Deuteronomy, it's really a book of remembering. It's just retelling the story. Chronicles, right? 1st and 2nd Chronicles are retelling the story. Like, we are just people who need that because of our fallen nature. And so I think I have now had these rhythms in place for a while, and now they're supporting me to remember. So I still have emotional ups and downs. As an example, I was kind of down this afternoon. I don't even know why. Working on stuff, and Kayla calls me, and we had a conversation. I was like, thank you. I like feel way better than I did an hour ago. So like, it's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's shorter. Instead of being like all day or down in the dumps or like feeling like I need Kayla to pull me out from the bottom, the roller coaster isn't like, the major highs and lows. It's a little more hourly hour, we'll call it, instead of day by day.
That's so good. I mean, and it's a process. I think the remembering, I say this all the time, it is so hard because it's just like what you were talking about in the Bible of like, as even like the Israelites, like they were just like let go from Pharaoh. And then they're like 2 days later, like, oh, this is so bad. Like we should go back and be slaves again. And I think the same goes for us is like, we just forget like how he's been faithful through that 9 months. And then the job comes, and when it goes away again, there's that part of us, that human part of us that is like, but what if, It's really hard to combat that day to day. But trying to remember the moments of his faithfulness over the scary anxiety parts, right?
Yeah.
You and Kayla have Legacy Roots Company, or do you call it Legacy Roots Co.?
It's just the Co, actually. Yes, okay. Good catch. That's great.
That's cool. I like it. It's very hip. Legacy Roots Co. What has been one special thing that has come out of that by helping families and couples like learn these rhythms?
I think the biggest impact I've seen are the families that have gone through our courses and have incorporated the Sabbath into their life. There's been a lot of families that have just shared such great stories with us. And I love, like, even one of my best friends was in Mexico last week and celebrating his birthday, and they own their own business. It's a super successful photography business. And he was like, yeah, we're coming back. And I had asked him something. He's like, oh yeah, but I got Sabbath tomorrow. So, we'll do it the day after. And it just like caught me off. I'm like, oh yeah, like you guys do that now. Like that is so cool. Like it's been years watching them do that. And, they share with us over and over again about how much it's changed. And that's not us, that's God. But that practice of incorporating that and getting the chance to work with them, they're just like, it's made such a difference because like for them, when you run your own business, especially, as an entrepreneur, like life, it's crazy. And it just, you feel like you need that day. And so that release of control is just so free. And to have the time that families want together, or people just saying like, gosh, my relationship with God is growing because I'm actually making time each week to spend with him instead of just getting up and like running toward career or running toward business or running toward kids' school activities. Like they're the most important thing that were in their life. And so those stories just really, really touch my heart.
Well, Christian, thank you for this conversation. I think you have such a beautiful, gentle nature about you. And I'm excited that you found your worth in being like a dad and this place with legacy roots, and that you're just building this foundation for your kids and your family and so many people. And that's what really matters, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we will be praying that by the time this episode airs, I can say, here's his new job. Go give him a high five.
That's right.
So, Christian, if people wanted to get connected to you or Legacy Roots Co., how can they do that?
You can find us at legacyrootsco.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Legacy Roots Co. And we have a sign up for a free family meal plan that Kayla does every week. So Kayla used to be a registered dietitian, and she is the best cook in the whole world.
Well, if she is cooking for 6 kids and a husband and herself, that is an amazing feat in and of itself.
She is a superhero. You can follow her at Kayla T. Cornish. On any of those platforms, you can get signed up for our meal plan. Yeah, it's just a great resource we love to give. And honestly, we eat. That's she's funny. She's like, this is what we're eating this week. And it's to die for. I love it.
That's great. Well, Christian, thank you so much for walking us through what it looks like, uncertainty and surrendering, even in the hard times. Thank you so much. Hey, I hope you heard Christian's story today and were encouraged to see that the value in who you are is not in what you do. Job loss is difficult, and if you are walking through that right now, I just encourage you to seek out his faithfulness and hold on to it as you walk along each and every step. To connect with Christian, simply visit daniellezapchenk.com for details. And here are 2 reflection questions from our time with Christian. Number 1, whether you are living through it right now or have walked through uncertainty and surrender, how was God faithful to you? Number 2, what can Sabbath look like for you? I know we've talked about Sabbath a couple times on the Parable podcast. And for me, I know I haven't done a full 24 hours, and maybe for you that seems kind of scary. But what are some next steps that you could start implementing Sabbath into your daily rhythm or your life rhythm? One easy way you can support the Parable podcast is simply by sharing this episode with a friend. If you could pass along this episode today, it really helps people find out about these amazing Parable stories. And also a big thanks to my very gifted husband, Eric, for his editing expertise. That is going to do it for today. I'm grateful that you took the time to spend it with me. Remember, your Parable showcases how even in the uncertainty, he is in the surrender. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.